I'm beyond excited today to welcome Becky Albertalli to the podcast. Becky is the winner of the William C. Morris Debut Award from the American Library Association for her 2015 novel Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, which was also longlisted for the National Book Award. She's a former clinical psychologist who specialized in working with children and teens, and currently lives with her family in Atlanta. The big screen version of Simon arrives in theaters on March 16th under the title Love, Simon. Welcome, Becky.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on the show. You and I last talked in June of 2015, about the time that it was about 2 months that Simon had been out at that point as a hardback. What a 2.5 years you've had.
It has been a busy couple of years. It's been kind of a whirlwind.
And congratulations on the success, because it's really incredible to see, especially where Simon is now on the cusp of being a big screen motion picture. And obviously we'll be talking about that a little bit more. But to kind of go back in time for listeners who haven't heard me multiple times on the show talk about what an awesome book Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is, tell us what that book's about and what its inspiration was to make it your debut novel.
Yeah, okay, so Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is a book, I like to describe it as a book about two boys falling in love over email. And I can give a little bit longer of it. You know, I can speak to it in a little bit more detail. It's about a boy named Simon who is growing up in a very thinly veiled version of the suburb where I grew up. So it's like right outside Atlanta. And he's 16 years old at the start of the book, turns 17, and he is gay, but he is pretty comfortable with that, but he hasn't come out yet, and he has his reasons that he hasn't come out yet. And at the start of the book, there's this kid who is like an acquaintance of Simon's at school. He's like, you know, a theater kid with Simon. And this kid, Martin Addison, stumbles upon some of the emails that Simon has been sending to this kind of anonymous pen pal, the boy he is falling in love with over email. So this acquaintance discovers these emails, decides he's going to basically blackmail Simon and, you know, kind of holds these emails over Simon's head because he wants something from Simon. And so basically the book is about Simon kind of negotiating that situation. But, you know, really, I think the heart of the story is A, kind of this email relationship that's developing, and B, just Simon dealing with this idea that he is growing up and changing, and he is different than he used to be. Just like you know, teenagers kind of go through that, I think, or you know, I know I did, this feeling that you have changed internally in certain ways, and then all of a sudden you kind of have to announce that. And for Simon, there's a very specific element of that, which is, you know, kind of related to coming out. And that's something that is very specific to him being gay. And then there's also kind of this element of, you know, there are all these little details about me that have changed too. And my family has this expectation that I will be the same as I've always been, like kid Simon, and I'm like kind of different, and I don't know how to be the Simon that they know and be the Simon that that I am in this exact moment in time, which is a little different.
And that's such I think, a universal story, whether you're coming out as gay or figuring out maybe what you want to be when you grow up, or if you're going against what the expectations of your parents were in that regard, or...
Yeah, I think so. I think, and you know, kind of the piece where, you know, I always try to be pretty careful is there is something universal about it, and there's definitely I mean, Simon's story is so personal for me, and kind of some of that struggle is very much me as a teen. But there's also you know, I do want to be careful always not to step on the toes of kind of this specific community that Simon's a part of, just as a gay teen boy, and kind of what it means to come out within the context of that community, which is something that I did not have to do, and something that, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's like a combination of a very specific experience that has some components to it that feel more universal. But it's not entirely universal, and I always want to respect, and appreciate kind of what this means specifically for Simon in this moment as a gay boy coming out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and having read the book, I think you definitely handled that pretty well, and I would imagine that the feedback in these couple of years have proven that case as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
I have to play the fanboy occasionally because I've loved this book so much.
Oh, gosh. That means a lot to me.
What was your inspiration for writing Simon?
I think, I've thought a lot about this question over the last couple of years since I wrote the book in 2013. And I think my answer has evolved quite a bit. Because I think my process as an author in general, but for this book in particular, has always been a little bit mysterious to me. And it's, it's not like a light bulb moment, or what, it was never a light bulb moment for Simon. I almost wish it was, but it was very much more like this character was somebody that I got to know in my head for a while. And I kind of learned all of these things about him. And then I ended up getting to know him better as I wrote him, and at this point in time, he certainly feels like I do routinely forget he's not real. He's such a part of Simon is such a part of my life. But back in 2013, I can see these little like seeds of inspiration for the story. Like there are these little moments that have happened in my life that kind of got woven in there. Like I do have a memory of being at work. I used to work at a school, and there was a whole team of psychologists that we were all on staff at the school. And I remember like getting on the kind of, communal like psychologist computer that had all the programs that you used to score the tests and stuff. And I got on there and I went in to check my email through Gmail, and one of my coworkers hadn't logged out of his email, and I was like, "Oh, there's your email, Pat." And I did not, screenshot my coworker's email and use that to blackmail him. I would have never, but obviously there's some part of me that, like, I guess played around with that idea, because that sort of showed up in Martin's character, and that's kind of where Martin went with it. So I don't know. I think it's like just a million moments like that get incorporated into some story, and I never like consciously set out to write a story about that, but I think that was just like living in my brain. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, Simon is headed to the big screen, as I mentioned in the intro, with a big studio release and helmed by none other than Greg Berlanti, who has, is kind of a master with teens and young adults, and is currently the master of the Arrowverse on the CW. What was it like going Hollywood and bringing Simon out in that fashion?
It's very surreal. I think, the first part of the process that I should mention that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize, and I certainly did not realize until I was in it, is that, with Hollywood in particular, it's like, there are a lot of things that can happen, and it's very rarely a sure thing. It's like, when you see an announcement that a book has been optioned for film, like Simon was, like it almost never turns into a movie. Like there are so many things that have to happen, and an option, they're really just kind of basically purchasing the right to make the film if they choose to. It's like they're renting it, kind of.
Right.
And so sometimes people ask me, like, how did it feel when Simon got optioned and then you knew it was going to be a movie? And I'm like, I literally did not know this thing was going to be a movie until I visited the production office like 2 weeks before they started filming. Like they were casting Nick Robinson, Jennifer Garner, everything like that. Like, and I was still like, that would be so cool if they actually made this movie. Like, too bad they won't. Because it's just, I don't know, it felt like such an unlikely thing, and it still is very surreal. And there's a part of me that's still like, I'm like, I think there's going to be a movie, and I mean, I'm like pretty sure there is now that the trailer's out and stuff. But yeah, so on one hand, it is the most surreal, unlikely, bizarre thing that's ever happened to me, and then on the other hand, it's just like it's like part of my life now, I guess. Is just I do wake up every day like thinking about this movie. I go to bed every night thinking about it. I'm like the biggest fan of this movie. And sometimes I almost forget that this is like, I'm not just like a super fan who's like, very active in the Love, Simon fandom. I'm like kind of one of the creators of it. And that is what really trips me up. I cannot believe that,
Mm-hmm. I remember when we talked for the 2015 interview that I had listened to the audiobook of Simon at the time because it had come out, and we had talked about just how it was as an author to hear your words as an audiobook.
Which is still very surreal.
And now you've seen this movie.
I know.
What was it like seeing it for the first time?
Oh my God.
I mean, were you an author going, that's my work and I like what they've done with it, or ooh, why'd they do that, or however that goes through your head, or were you sitting there just as the fangirl going, this is a great movie?
Oh, 100% fangirl. It was like, well, so when I saw the movie for the first time, I had the experience. I got really lucky. I mean, in a million ways, I've been very lucky with this whole Simon thing. But one of the ways that I was lucky is that they filmed it in my hometown. A lot of movies happen to film in Atlanta, and I happen to live in Atlanta, and this movie is set in Atlanta, and just, it all came together. It was filmed in Atlanta, and I got to see about half of it being filmed. So when I saw the movie, there were parts that I had kind of, either watched from the playback area kind of on set, or I had actually watched the actors, like, acting that out as it appeared in the movie. And I almost like thought I'd be prepared for it. But when I sat down and saw the movie, it was, I was totally swept away. There was like no part of me that's like, oh, that's different from the book or whatever. And I really hope audiences will approach the movie as something different from the book. It's actually quite faithful to the book. If you, as long as you're not going in expecting it to be line by line, in which case, you probably will be more satisfied by, the audiobook, which does have all the lines, and is also like many, many hours. But if you're open to kind of a different interpretation of the story, it's very, very faithful. It's completely faithful to the like emotional tone of the story, and I loved it. Like I watched the whole thing, and I after it was over, I was like stunned into silence, and I was there with one of my producers, Wick Godfrey from Temple Hill, and and a couple of the other production people. And I think Wick was like nervous about how quiet I was, because it was like I was speechless. I didn't even know what to say. I was head over heels. And then as soon as we, I was there with my husband. As soon as we got in the car and shut the door, I like burst into hysterical sobbing tears, like. And my husband was like, oh no, you didn't like it. And I'm like, no, it was the best movie I've ever seen. It's the best. I just saw the best movie I'll ever see in my whole life. And I just like cried all the way home, just out of pure like love for this movie. I think, I literally think my readers make fun of me for how much I love this movie, and they should, because it's ridiculous. Like I am I'm like a stan for this movie. I think I'm using the word right. Hopefully a stan. So.
I think it's great that you are that big of a champion, because I think it tells everybody who might be, oh, what did they do to this book? You know, because sometimes that does happen. It's like, how did they get this movie from that book? You know, and the fact that the author can be that behind it, I think, is a tremendous, you know, stamp of approval for the fans to get all excited about it too.
Yeah, and I really hope, that's my biggest hope, is that my readers will get excited and get hyped for this, and that they will go into this film, just, you know, with an open mind too, because it is not. And Angie Thomas, who wrote The Hate You Give, she's talked about this a lot too, and she and I text about this all the time. But you know, I think one of the things that readers need to know is that you know, the film is not going to be just like the book. And Angie's got the best way of saying it. She calls it the fraternal twin of the book, which I think is genius. And you know, to me, what that means is that, you know, these two versions of the story, you know, coexist. They exist side by side. When the film comes out, the book's still around. Like, you know, the book's not going anywhere. And so, you know, all those moments that are really important to people in the book, those are still there in the book. And some of them are in the film, and there are parts of the film that are eerily like word for word from the book. There's certain scenes that it's just like, you know, when you watch like Nick Robinson and Jennifer Garner and stuff like that, like, and like the, you know, like Simon coming out on Christmas to his family is like almost exactly like it is in the book. And it's just like, as an author, it's bizarre. Like watching it, it's like very cool. But and then certain scenes are a little different. And for me, that's exciting. And I just hope that my readers will be excited by that too.
Yeah. Well, this one certainly is. So how much input did you have in the movie? Or was it just, here's the book, please write your script and have a nice day? Or did you get to have more?
It's, you know, I think, you know, I'm not a formal producer on the movie. So technically, I do think like technically my team could have like taken the book and run with it. But you know, I happen to have looked into having a very collaborative team. So I do feel like I mean, I'm like very happy with the amount of input that I had. Because, you know, I think this team in particular has been super committed to like making sure that I'm happy with kind of the adaptation and just, you know, and just making sure that it's faithful to the source material. So, you know, and it's kind of been this thing where they had the writers write the script, and I wasn't a part of like writing the script. That was Isaac Aptaker and Elizabeth Berger, who you know, are best known, I think, for the TV show This Is Us, and you know, so they wrote this script, and then it was sent to me, and I was supposed to like give feedback on it, and like 99% of my feedback was just like, I'm obsessed with this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, but I think, yeah, I think, you know, they have been very, very open to my input throughout the entire process. It's like, I will say, like, sometimes readers will ask me to like make sure this song gets in the soundtrack or something like that, and I do not have that kind of control. Yeah, no, I do feel very involved.
That's awesome. And I have to say, I didn't realize that the script writers were attached to This Is Us.
Oh, yeah, they are. They're phenomenal.
Just makes me fanboy all the more, because the storytelling on that show is so exceptional.
Yeah. Oh, Isaac and Elizabeth are like next level genius. Like I haven't met Elizabeth in person, but I met Isaac, and I like could not talk when I met him. I was just like, yeah, I can't wait for people to see this movie, because I've read the whole script, and I've seen the movie, and I know most people aren't gonna have the opportunity to sit down with the script, but just like the I mean, the script is a work of art. Like even before you get into, having bringing on these like brilliant actors who are all at the top of their game. Like, you just the script itself is magic. It's so great. Like it's just like they just assembled the dream team for this movie. It's cool.
Without going into spoilers, because we don't want to do that for anybody, did the script writing team bring some nuances to the script that now you go back and say, oh, that would have been great in the book?
Oh my God, yes, they did. And like it's there are so many moments like that, and it's funny. I've heard that from a couple of other authors whose books have been adapted, and they're just like, I wish I had written that one. One scene actually particularly comes to mind, and this was really interesting because this was neither in the book nor was it in the first draft of the script. And the person who thought to add this particular moment into the movie was Jennifer Garner, who plays the mom. Like, so Jennifer Garner, apparently she like read the script and she was like, I think there should be this scene between the mom and Simon. Like, I want to see this resolution of kind of their arc. And so Isaac and Elizabeth, the screenwriters, took that note, and what they came up with is this like extra scene that's in the movie. And this is one of many scenes that is like, I wish I'd put in the book, but there's this one in particular between Nick Robinson and Jennifer Garner, Simon and his mom. It is the ultimate like tearjerker, most beautiful moment between them, and it's just like I get like choked up just thinking about it. We were all crying at every take when we watched this being filmed, and so I love that, and I love that it was Jennifer Garner of all people, like who
sure
it, because it's just this is such a like team effort. This movie, it's just like so many people have made this movie like what it is. It's really special.
That's awesome. You gave me goosebumps. I have no idea what the scene is, and I'm like, oh my God, need to see this right now.
You're definitely gonna cry.
How did the title come to change? I mean, in some ways it makes a lot of sense because Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is a bit of a mouthful.
It is. Yeah, it's I think pretty early on they kind of warned me. They're like, hey, I think they're going to change the title. And at first I was like, what? And kind of knowing it was a mouthful. And I was like, but the perks of being a wallflower is a mouthful, and, trying to come up with examples to present to them. But, and that's literally what it is. I've seen people kind of wonder if, they're trying to kind of make it seem, less obviously about a gay kid, but I'm like, I think now anybody who's seen the trailer at this point knows that like Fox is not shying away from that. It's hard to remember, and it's hard to say, and it works a little better as a book title than it does as a movie title. And I think for Fox, one of the things that I didn't know, but I kind of learned about their process, is they're very like research driven. So they actually tested the book title, and they tested a whole bunch of titles, some of which I hated. They tested them in the group, and so they kind of let audiences give feedback about what they thought of the movie, what they thought of the title, and and the book title was basically a lot of the people who they were reaching for these early screenings, they hadn't heard of the book. For this movie, what Fox's goal is to reach a much bigger audience than I ever have with the book. So like most of the audience in theory will not have heard of the book. Mm-hmm. So the title didn't have that meaning for them, and they were just like, I don't get it. Fox tried out Simon versus, like just that as the title, and then people were like, Simon versus what? And, so there were all these different titles, but yeah. So they kind of where they landed on Love Simon. I think I'm almost positive that I am the one who put that on a list and suggested it as a title that I thought, if we can't use the book title, here's one that I would like. And I think this is one of mine. I do think that. And I personally really love it. And I'm happy. I'm really happy with it. Mm-hmm. It comes directly from the book. Like, you can open up the hardcover and take a picture of Love, Simon in the book. Mm-hmm. I love that it is just very, like, unabashedly a love story title. And, I think to me that's really special. And just also the idea that Fox put so much care into, like, testing all these titles, and they want to reach a broad audience. That alone, like, means something to me. And from what I've been told about these early test audiences, like, this movie has been testing so well that everybody's been shocked. And like, even the people who, like, love this movie so much have been, like, shocked at just how many other people are just, like, falling in love with it after seeing it, including people who aren't necessarily part of, the target group that they expected to fall in love with it. Like, I think they tested it in LA, thought it would do pretty well, and it did. It did even better than pretty well. And then they tested it in, like, Kansas City, and they weren't sure how it would do, and it did even better than LA. Like, people, like, including, like, kind of like these, like, red state mm-hmm. people, who had filled out on their surveys and stuff, things like, I never thought I would be so invested in a love story between two boys, but apparently I am. And so with that in mind, Fox was like, okay, like, we've got to make sure that this movie goes mainstream, and that I can appreciate, and that's what changing the title was all about, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And yet they've managed to, for those of us who have long been invested with the book, there are things in the marketing campaign that tie back to the book so well, like the use of the red and
yes,
the font even in some cases, and those kind of things.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and that was a surprise to me. I did not realize that. Yeah, the poster is so similar to the book cover, and it's I almost, like, that's exactly how I pictured the poster, like, in my dreams. I can't believe that's actually pretty much, like, how it turned out. And then just also whoever's running their social media, I don't know who that is. I don't know who in Fox is running their, like, Love, Simon movie social media. But I've, like, proposed marriage to them a couple of times, I think, on Twitter. Like, I'm so, like, it's so based on the book. Like, it's clearly somebody who's very, very familiar with the book, and that means a lot to me, and I think it means a lot to my readers.
It does. We talked a little bit about, before we actually got recording, that one of my early on favorite social things from the movie that even sold me more on how good this movie was going to be was the fact that there was a block for National Cookie Day that used Oreos.
Yes.
And people who know the book know that Oreos play a part in the story for Simon. And the fact that Oreo actually allowed themselves to be in the film, because I know enough to know that you just can't throw Oreos on the screen without asking first.
Yeah. No, I know. I've learned so much about that. Yeah, Oreo, Waffle House, like some of these things that are, they're just little details, but they do help kind of color Simon's world. And these companies were, like, all in, which is really exciting. Even apparently somebody had to reach out to J.K. Rowling to get permission to put a Hufflepuff crest or something, or maybe it's a scarf. I don't remember exactly what it is, but there's some, like, Hufflepuff gear in Simon's bedroom. And because he's canon Hufflepuff like me, and apparently J.K. Rowling herself, like, gave permission for it to be used in the movie, which is something that, like, you can write that on my gravestone if you want, like.
That's incredible that it went down to that level, because I'd forgotten about Waffle House, but to me, Simon and Oreos have always been tied together since I read that book, and every time I see Oreo commercials, it's like, Simon, that's how locked the brand has been, and it's just just one more thing that clicks all of it together for me anyway.
I think so too. If Oreo, the company, is listening to this, like I'm very eager to be followed on Twitter by them. Waffle House followed me on Twitter after the trailer dropped. So, Oreo, if you hear this, like let's text, let's DM. Like I want to be your friend, Oreo Corporation. So
you talked about this just a little bit ago, and about how Fox is pushing this as a mainstream film, and to me, it really is significant that a gay teen love story is, going wide with Fox. And there have been other, gay teen YA stories that have been out there. I'm thinking Geography Club and something like Summer, and films of that nature that are great films, but they're made on a very, they're indie films and films that occasionally struggle for distribution. What was it about Simon, do you think, or perhaps since you've been through the process, that made Fox go, yeah, this gets to go this way?
God, I mean, I don't entirely know. And I think, one thing I always want to kind of emphasize is that there's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot with like timing. And of course, like, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Like, Simon is getting this like kind of mainstream rom-com, like John Hughes treatment. And that's, I think, kind of new, but, I think part of why, audiences and also the studio and kind of the industry are receptive to this at this moment is because of, the success of, Moonlight, for example, or, more recently, and it is, also, and some of a lot of these films Simon was already filming in the works as these movies were being developed and coming out, but Call Me by Your Name, so basically, like I think a lot of other earlier films and earlier stories do have to get a lot of credit for kind of, just the roles that they've played in this process of kind of mainstreaming this type of story. And I don't know, I have a lot of mixed feelings about the fact that, like, kind of, you could say, like, Simon, out of all the stories, was the one, like, picked for this, and like whether it should have been Simon. But my thought is that, when I think about Simon, and when I think about the story that I was telling in the book and that gets told in the film, there's this relationship, and it's a relationship between two boys, and that is something that is, a little bit new for kind of a mainstream film. But, that's not kind of all that Simon is about too. So, I don't know, when I think about kind of what people have been responding to, I do want to think that some of it has to do with just some of these specific, like, elements of this book, not just the fact that it's a gay love story, because there's so many great ones out there. There really are, more and more every day, it feels like, and it's an exciting time, especially in publishing for that. But it's Simon is a very particular story with a particular point of view, and it's a story about my high school, and it's a story about my drama club, and the voice is very very much kind of my voice, and so it's hard to say kind of how that all came together, but I don't know. I don't know kind of what it was that Temple Hill, my production company, and Greg Berlanti, and kind of all the people involved saw in this book. But I'm glad they did, because kind of what they've been able to do with it has, in my opinion, elevated the story and just kind of brought this layer of nuance that I could not bring to it myself.
I love that you equated it with John Hughes, because just thinking about Simon's story in general, you could definitely see it in the lexicon with The Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink and those films.
That's like, I mean, and you know, they've been using that since kind of day one when they were like pitching it to the studios and stuff. And that's, to me, it's like a huge compliment because I like have always loved those movies. And, you know, and I just, you know, I grew up on these rom-coms, like, you know, the John Hughes ones, and then also some of the ones that were a little bit later. Like I think 10 Things I Hate About You and Never Been Kissed were two that were like very formative for me. So I love that this movie is going to kind of be in that vein and kind of, you know, kind of add to that whole, like, you know, genre of stories that I grew up on, you know, in the 80s and 90s and beyond.
Mm-hmm. So did you, since it filmed in Atlanta and you were actually on set occasionally, did you get to have the author cameo where you get to maybe walk down the hall or do something? I do
have a cameo. It's like so embarrassing so a lot of times authors have like a really classy cameo in their movie. Like I keep thinking of in everything, like Nicola Yoon and her family have like this beautiful cameo on the beach, and they're like a family walking down the beach together. So my cameo, I like they had something all planned for me in the carnival scene. I think I was supposed to be like the ticket vendor or something like that. But it rained the day they were supposed to film it, and so they had to move around which day they were filming what. And it ended up that I was on book tour during the carnival scene, and so the only place that I could have my cameo at that point was the Halloween party, and there are no adults in that scene, and I'm an adult. I'm 35 at the time. It was being filmed. I was 34, and you know, I'm probably a young-looking 34, but like not that young-looking. And so I was there with my friend Adam Silvera, who most recently wrote "They Both Die at the End," and he and I were put into costumes to be at this Halloween party as like our cameo. And you know, they had me in like hair and makeup, and they were like, okay, we're gonna make you look like a teenager for the background. And then my producer comes up to me and like he kind of like takes one look at me, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna get masks for these two. So Adam and I are in the Halloween party. We're wearing masks so we don't look too old. I still think like even in a mask, I think you can tell that I'm like a mom. I just think I have that vibe in the background. But and then, you know, cause it's a party, they handed around these like, you know, beer bottles, and they filled them with water. So you could be drinking water from a beer bottle in the scene. And I'm like nervous as it's being filmed. So I'm just like drinking the water like it's a water bottle. But it's a beer bottle. So I am the, my classic cameo in this movie is me in a mask drinking a beer bottle, like chugging. So look for me.
I will definitely keep an eye out for that.
What you should do to find me is there's going to be a scene where Garrett is singing karaoke, and if you look for, I think this is easy to remember. Look for Waldo, because you know you can think like, you know, where's Waldo? You look for Waldo. So look for Waldo, and Adam and I are standing right next to Waldo.
Okay. So. Now everybody knows the secret of the Easter egg of where Becky is in the movie.
Yeah, we were not classy adults in that scene. So.
But that's awesome though. You're just back there chugging on what's supposed to be beer.
Just probably I'm chugging the whole time. I can't remember exactly because I was like kind of cringing to see myself, but when I saw the movie, but yeah, I think I'm just like chugging.
Now, shifting over to books, because you've got their books happening for you as well. This past spring, you released The Upside of Unrequited, which was such this very interesting package of like dealing with teenage loneliness and first boyfriends and how siblings grow and evolve. How do you describe this book? Because I have had a hard time putting this one into words because there was so much good stuff going on in it.
Oh, thank you. A lot of times when I try to explain, and I have trouble describing it too in some ways because it's like it hits so close to home for me. But sometimes I'll be like, okay, so Molly's this girl who gets no action, and this is a book about her wanting to get some action and then ultimately getting some action. But yeah, no, I think it's which of course makes it sound a little bit more superficial than I think it really is. Because what I think what it's really about is it's about this girl who, for various reasons, feels she does not have access to romantic relationships. It's just something she wants. And so kind of it's about her figuring out, how is it that other people make this happen? Is this something that she can make happen? And how does she do that on her own terms?
It's a much more succinct way than I think I've ever put it.
Okay. It's always succinct, so I'm going to stop there now.
What was the inspiration behind it? Because that's always one of my favorite questions to hear. And kind of how did you wrap it all together? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in this book for her and those around her, her sister, her parents.
Yeah, I mean, this book was like, a little bit about kind of the process of writing it. It was a nightmare to write. Simon was like my charmed book where it was fairly straightforward, my kind of editorial process with that one. Upside took me 2 years. I rewrote that thing 7 times. Like, I completely changed the plot. Like, when I say rewrote it, I mean, like, it had a switched at birth plot at one point. It had a dating app plot at one point. Like, it was like totally new stories. And so I kind of had to write my way to it. And, some of it was, I think, like, Simon's a very personal book for me. Upside's very personal, but in a different way. And I think kind of the big difference there is Upside is personal and it kind of gets at some issues that I had not, and maybe have not entirely like worked through myself yet. So it was a little bit of a bruise, like working on that book. And, and I think ultimately, what got me there was my my editor, Donna Bray from HarperCollins and Balzer and Bray, just like for all my books, that one, it was almost like I could not have gotten out of the muck without her on that book. But I think maybe like stripping away some of the high concept things that I was trying to do with it, and cutting straight to the heart of just the relationships between these characters and this like emotional truth that ties very, very closely back to kind of my core experiences as a teen who got no action like Molly, but Molly got more action than I did as a teen, really. So yeah, I don't really know how it came together. It wasn't easy to make a book out of that mess.
Well, it's interesting how you talk about some of the stuff that got cast aside, because what's in there, to me, was so powerful for the teenage experience, because, Molly doesn't get action, but her sister does, and she's like, yeah. What the hell? And then you've got the whole, because it takes place during the time that marriage equality became the national law, that her lesbian parents are looking at, officially tying the knot, which is a big deal that she's also involved in. And then these boys that are around her, the ones that might want her, she doesn't really want them.
Well, she does, but I don't know. Yeah, no, I think it's just, like for Molly, I think a lot of it is just, that's kind of her pattern. The way what's a little more comfortable for her is kind of having a crush and having it be a little bit like feeling a little bit out of her reach. And, this thing that she wants so badly, she's also very afraid of. And so she's kind of working through the fear of getting what she wants.
Hmm. That's a great way to put it. And now that I think, now that you've said that, and I rethink about the book a little bit, but yeah, and you've really tapped kind of the another universal teen story in the same way that Simon was, I think.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. It's yeah, that book. It's funny. Like I think I'm still a little bit like raw from just the process with that book. That it's like you. I don't know. Like I think I released it, and I just had even more so than Simon. I had no idea how it was going to be received, and I'm protective of it, but also like I'm just like sometimes I can't even look at it because like I mean those are a rough couple of years. So part of me is just like thank God it's out there because I'm not rewriting it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're as hard as it can be to push the button to send it off. There's that big relief that it's like, oh, thank God that's done.
Yeah.
That story's out of me now.
Yeah. You can move on.
Now, coming up after Love, Simon comes out, in about a month after that movie, actually, we get the novel sequel with
Yeah.
Leah on. I have a hard time saying this title. Leah on the Offbeat. I don't know why that doesn't flow for me too well.
Oh yeah, I say Leah on the Offbeat, and she actually because it's sort of that's a name that can be pronounced many ways. Leah in the book, Leah on the Offbeat, clarifies that. I think it feels a little easier to say Leah on the Offbeat, but yeah, Leah on the Offbeat is it really is it's a companion book, but I do think of it as a sequel because it's senior year, same group of friends, and because both books like Simon versus and Leah are such like friend group stories, I think it really reads like a sequel because it's the same group of friends and it's just junior year and then senior year, and it's just filtered through a different character, and it's I don't know. It's really interesting. I have to be careful what I say because I've been asked to be very discreet about this book, and that's due to kind of between like Fox Studios and HarperCollins and stuff, and them kind of wanting the movie to exist before Leah, the continuation comes and kind of dismantles all kinds of things that are in the movie. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm not allowed to say about it, but what I will say is it was a blast to write this book and to kind of be back with all these characters from Simon and sometimes people on Twitter or something will ask me like, are we going to get to see more of Simon in Leah and Offbeat? And I'm like, Simon is her best friend. Like he is all over this book. Like he's, I don't know. I could do a search probably in the document, be like, how many times did I type the word Simon? It would be like a million. Like, you will get your Simon content. You'll get your Simon and Blue content. I highly recommend people read Simon before Leah. In a way that kind of there's a little more flexibility, I think, with the Upside of Unrequited, which stands a little more apart, even though it's in the same universe. I think you probably get the most out of it if you read the three in order, but you really should read Simon before Leah, not only because Leah absolutely spoils the big question in Simon. It does. Like that, it's sort of, that's unavoidable. And also I think you get a lot more out of Leah if you know the story of Simon and kind of some of the things that are happening in this friend group that you see through Simon's point of view, and then Leah it's like Leah comes along and you kind of learn a little bit more about some of the things that that you thought you knew played out one way, and I guess Leah's perspective on certain things is a little different than Simon's. So
interesting. I had not seen the connections between Simon and Unrequited, and now I kind of want to go back and reread.
Oh yeah. It's it's definitely a companion book. The biggest connection is Abby in the Upside of Unrequited is the same Abby. So Molly Peskin Sousa, like that's Abby Sousa, and so they're cousins, and Abby was kind of part of that whole clique in Upside of Unrequited, and then she moved to Georgia and became part of Simon's clique. So,
Okay.
Vera calls this the Abby-verse, like instead of the Simon-verse, because it's like Abby is the connection there. So.
Okay. See, I was already planning to go back and visit Simon again before the movie. And now I may have to just do Unrequited as well after that, and that'll get me ready for Leah too.
Yeah, I think I mean, anybody who does do that and like reads them all in order is going to find all kinds of Easter eggs. Like there's Upside Easter eggs in Leah and things like that. So.
Okay. Well, now I have some of my my reading planned out for the future. Any other plans for 2018 past Leah that you can share at this point?
Yeah, I think kind of the major thing past Leah that I have going on in 2018 is What If It's Us, which is my co-write project with Adam Silvera. And that is, well, it's the first book that I've ever co-written. It has been the most fun I've ever had writing a book. But that one comes out in October of 2018. And it's about two boys who kind of meet and fall in love in New York City. And it's it's been just the whole process of that book has been really, really interesting. It's just been the coolest like creative experience ever. And I know you mentioned just co-writing and I know that's something that you've done as well. And there's nothing really like it, to be able to join forces with a different author and a different mind and like tell a story coming at it from two different angles.
Yeah, it's unique, and I think everybody approaches it in their own unique way. I know some people who co-write with different people.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different thing how they'll work with person A versus person B.
Right. And I think, and some of it, I think you almost need to like, you discover as you're doing it, I think, or at least that was for me and for Adam.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that's exciting. Two Becky books in the same year.
Yeah, it's a bit busy. I'm a little nervous. Just with 2 books and a movie, and I'm already like so over. And and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old too, and so it's like, we're gonna see how it goes next year. We're gonna see if I have time to sleep at all ever. I don't know.
You'll take cat naps on planes or something.
Yeah.
What's the best way people can keep up with you, as well as news about the movie as it rolls out?
I love this question so much because I'm like dying to like lay this out there because it's all the communication. I feel like I'm getting a lot of messages and a lot of questions and a lot of it can be a little scattered, and that's just how things are. I think with so many different social media platforms and just authors being accessible in different ways and every author having different preferences for that. So here's what I think. So the best way to keep up with movie updates and to kind of know what's happening, follow me on Twitter. If I'm allowed to announce it, like you can pretty much bet I'm going to announce it on Twitter first usually. Also, follow the Love Simon Movie official social media platforms. It's just Love Simon Movie on Twitter and Instagram, and I think they have a Facebook page as well. And then there's also my Twitter, my Instagram, and I have an author Facebook page, which my amazing assistant keeps updated for me. And those I believe are all just at Becky Albertalli. And then, let's see, other ways to get information. There are reader-run movie accounts on Twitter and Instagram. I can't remember the Instagram handle off the top of my head, but on Twitter it's at Love Simon Film. And those are a couple of readers who run that, but they're incredible. And they are like super up to date, and one thing that they're really good about is they take this like movie content from the Love Simon Movie official account, and they bring it back to the book, and they connect it to the book, and they find the page in the book that references the movie promo, and it's really moving almost, like the way they're able to do that. So that's what I recommend. And then as far as like reaching me, the best ways to do that are I tend to be most responsive on Twitter. That's just sort of what's easiest for me. Emails, the best, if you have a question, the best thing to do is to email my assistant at albertalli.requests@gmail.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, Becky, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about the movie and the books.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun.
Continued best of success in 2018 with the movie release and Leah and everything else.
Oh, thank you.